Welcome to Sitcom Showdown, a podcast that reviews classic sitcom episodes and inducts them into our very own Hall of Fame. As usual, one of us has chosen a sitcom episode and the other guy has no idea what it's going to be. Will they already know it? Will they love it? Can they be convinced that it's worthy? Let's find out on Sitcom Showdown.
Welcome back, everyone, to episode 36 of Sitcom Showdown. We're so glad you could join us.
Yeah.
I'm Steve, and
Jeff is here. Yep, hello.
He's over there. What have you got for us tonight?
It sort of ties in with a couple of the last things you've brought to the table, in that it's a kids show, but it is a definite sitcom, and you probably know what's coming, but it's Basil Brush.
Basil Brush.
Or to be more accurate, it's the Basil Brush show.
Does he boom boom in the Basil Brush show?
Yeah, he boom booms every 5 seconds.
Does he what?
He's actually tortured people with boom booms in an episode. He tied them to a chair and kept telling them jokes until they cracked. Yeah.
That sounds like pretty fun.
Yeah.
So, tell me more.
I will. I'll reach for the notes here, but this is from the early 2000s. So this episode of the Basil Brush show is from 2004, but this show ran from 2002 to 2007. 6 seasons, 13 episodes each one.
Wow.
This is Series 3, Episode 12, and it's called Doggone It. Yes, and it was on the network CBBC, which I'm sure you're familiar with.
Well, hang on.
Yeah.
CBBC.
Yeah, children's BBC. It's one of their channels.
Right, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so we've got ABC Kids, so that's the equivalent of CBBC. Huh. So for people who haven't heard of Basil Brush, he's a fox, he's a glove puppet, and he first got on telly in 1963, and he had his own show which ran from 1968 to 1980, because that show was sort of, they do discussions at the desk with the human companion, and then they do some sketches and have a variety act on and all that business. But he's always had a human companion, but from, 1969 to 1973, his human companion was Mr. Derek, who is Derek Fowles from Yes Minister.
Very
so there
good.
you go. Yeah. He moved from Basil Brush to Yes Minister.
Oh,
what a move.
For stardom.
But this new sitcom is nothing like that, and I'll give you a description as described by me in a 2006 essay I wrote on Basil Brush for university. Basil
That's cheating.
Yeah, it is. I have previous notes. Basil lives in a flat with 3 housemates. There's Mr. Stephen, who's the adult male. He's a struggling actor. There's Miss Molly, who's a preteen sort of cross between Lisa Simpson and Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Right.
And Mr. Stephen's nephew Dave, who's a 10-year-old wealth-obsessed, immaculately dressed mini tycoon with no scruples at all, as we'll find out in this episode.
Like Richie Rich?
Like Richie Rich, except with talent. Yeah.
How does Molly fit into the...
So Molly's
picture?
Stephen's niece. So Dave and Molly are brother and sister.
Okay, got that, yeah.
And their parents have gone off on a round-the-world trip, which for some reason takes 6 years to do, and we never see them.
Yep.
How they moved in with Basil, I have no idea, but they all share the flat. So maybe he's had to take in lodgers.
This was inspired by Dr. Zeus.
Yeah, could be. In what way?
No, I'm getting myself confused. I'm getting muddled. I'm confusing the Cat in the Hat with
the Bernstein
Fox in
Bears.
Socks.
Oh, Fox in Socks. We can come back to that one if you like.
No, let's just cut it out.
Yeah, fair enough. So this show usually moves between the flat and the coffee shop, which is run by Anil, and it's Anil's Caf. In this episode, though, there's not a lot of caf action, so it's an unusual episode, this one. It's mainly in the flat.
Low caf.
But Anil, who presumably is an
Decaf.
Indian restaurateur, I
got there eventually.
He's got what I think is a niece or a young relative called India, and she works at the cafe as well. But there's this revolving cast, so they've always, in different seasons, they've got different people living upstairs and stuff. Anyway, let's go into the characters. Basil Brush plays himself, and there's a lot of fourth wall breaking in this show. So he's playing himself, which is a famous fox from the telly, although he seems to be retired because he's always in the flat. He's not out there on showbiz jobs, and few people recognise him, but he does have profile.
We're watching a sitcom where Basil plays
plays himself, and he was the fox on the telly. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Yep, got it.
Mr. Stephen. Yeah. Mr. Stephen is played by Chris Pizzey. Pizzey, so I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but he was 25 when he got the role of Mr. Stephen, and who is handily for the show. Mr. Stephen is also a children's entertainer and aspiring actor. And this character is the main figure of fun in the show, and he's the brunt of all the gags. Poor dude. So the writers put Chris Pizzey through all sorts of torturous situations in every episode, and this dude deserves an award for handling all the embarrassing situations. And, so for example, in this episode we're about to see, he has to eat dog food, and you go, oh no. So he gets all the put downs, and he's also been in The Sarah Jane Adventures, The Bill, London's Burning, Doc Martin, and most recently in Stan Lee's Lucky Man, which I've not watched.
Stan Lee's.
From Marvel. So there's a show called Lucky Man.
Okay, so just connect that.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's an American show, is it?
I'm assuming it's American, but maybe it's filmed in Britain, because as we'll find out, there's another cast member who's been in it. Molly is played by Georgina Leonidas. A lot of people might recognise her, though, from being in 3 of the Harry Potter films as the character Katie Bell. She's also been in episodes of Holby City, New Tricks, Father Brown, and Wizards vs. Aliens. Now, was Wizards vs. Aliens a Russell T Davies
Yes.
vehicle? Yeah, cool. Young Dave is played by Michael Hayes, and he was in dozens of episodes of this show. He does a pretty darn good job as a child actor, but looking on IMDb, it doesn't have him appearing in anything else except for one TV movie in 2003. So I thought, maybe he just gave up acting.
Yeah, packed it in.
Yeah, so I think he's a primary school teacher these days, but he'd only be, as I said, 26? Yeah. Anyhow, so the special guest in this episode, he comes up in other episodes, not very often, is the landlord, Mr. Rossiter. Named after Leonard Rossiter, who's a sitcom actor. He's played by Milton Johns, who's just lovely and brilliant. And so you and me remember him most for being in Doctor Who, so he had some big roles with Troughton and Baker. So he was in The Android Invasion as Guy Crayford, the main bad guy with the eye patch, with the Kralls. He had The Enemy of the World with Troughton and The Invasion of Time, again with Tom Baker. But he's also been in, and I'll have to take a deep breath for this lot, Z-Cars, Poldark, The Good Life, Yes Minister, Shoestring, The Professionals, Butterflies, The Pickwick Papers, Bergerac, Freshfields, Minder, Coronation Street, X-Files, Remington Steele, and The Empire Strikes Back.
Oh, it's quite the resume.
Yeah. You'll recognise him anyway. So 2 characters who are in the episodes a lot, but not this particular episode, are Anil, the cafe owner, normally a total highlight. He's really, really good. Played by Ajay Chabra, and he's had his own series called Planet AJ on BBC, and he's had roles in Casualty, Holby City, The Bill, and most recently in Stan Lee's Lucky Man. And Madison, who's Basil's upstairs neighbour, who's a clothes designer and a Yankee American person. She pops in for a bit in this episode, but she's played by Welsh actress and singer Laura Evans. So there you go. Have you ever been forced by me to watch an episode of this, Steve?
I think I might have watched one, yes.
Well, anyway, I'm assuming other than that, there's no prior contact with Basil Brush.
Well, other than the original show.
Yeah, okay, so let's briefly chat about that, because I know who Basil Brush is, but I can never remember in my life watching Basil Brush in the same way I'd watched Banana Man or Danger Mouse or anything else. Can you actually remember ever watching it on telly?
Not in a lot of detail, but I remember listening to jokes and thinking it was funny. But maybe because it's not set in a situation. Yeah. There's not that much to be memorable about it, if it's mostly just someone sitting at a desk with...
So it's a variety show.
You know what I mean?
But I remember watching Hey Hey It's Saturday and other variety shows, like the Two Ronnies, but I don't remember watching Basil Brush. But we know who he is.
It's just too far back there, Jeff.
Okay, cool. Fair enough.
Too many brain cells have been lost since...
Fair enough, too.
The Basil Brush brain cell was jettisoned years ago.
And I think, as we're about to see, Basil's own brain cells have diminished over the years.
Okay.
So, yeah, let's take in a clip and go off and watch this show.
Let's just hope that's not the landlord. If he sees we've turned this place into a safari park, we'll be evicted.
Oh, he hardly ever shows his long, stupid face round here.
It's the landlord!
What was that about a long, stupid face?
Oops. I forgot about his big ears as well.
Now open this door! too.
Now, what do you want?
I am just here on my annual inspection.
Ooh. Well, I've got one here from 1976. Boom, boom.
What's that?
What's what?
That!
Oh, that's, what is it, Basil?
That's Mr. Stephen.
Thanks a bunch!
Yeah, he's, learning to play the trumpet.
Oh, right.
Well done, Miss Molly. Quick thinking.
Just a minute. You're there, and that was coming from the bedroom.
Yes. Well, they won't let me practice in here.
We're back.
Yep. And we've just watched Basil Brush, Series 3, Episode 12, Doggone It. And I'll quickly go into this, unless you've got any pre-synopsis comments.
No.
No?
No, go for it.
So the short version of this synopsis is that young Dave is hiding animals in the flat to take money from pet sitting against the wishes of Basil, Stephen and Molly, and that causes problems on its own. But then Mr. Rossiter, the landlord, shows up for their annual inspection and he has a strict no animals policy.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the overview here.
Now the long version.
Now the long version. So we open in the flat and there's a quick sequence with Basil, Molly and Stephen. They're watching telly and sitting on the couch, and there's some gags about Basil's garlic breath because he ate Dave's French homework. They catch Dave sneaking into the flat with a cage of mice, and he claims that the schools asked him to look after the class pets during the holidays. The others think he's going to do experiments on them for money and things like that, but Dave sort of convinces them that it's all legit and he's being genuinely nice, and he doesn't want the mice to starve or die of cold in the classroom, and besides, they're so cute.
It's very suspicious.
It is a bit suspicious. But to convince them even further, because Basil, Stephen and Molly are still a bit wary, Dave proves he's capable of niceness by giving them a wad of cash to treat them to a night out at the movies. So they take the bait and off they pop and they go to the flicks. So naturally, while they're away, Dave's been given an inch and he takes a yard.
Yep.
Because when the others arrive back at the flat's front door, all they can hear are raucous animal noises. So they timidly open the door and they can see into the flat, and there's screeching parrots and bleating goats and barking dogs and donkeys, kittens, rabbits, hamsters and an elephant. The others confront Dave, who claims he's looking after all these animals for the school. But they see through that, and he has to admit he's running a pet sitting operation. And somehow, I don't know how he does it, but he convinces them to give it a shot, mainly with cash, saying to Basil, Stephen and Molly, look, you guys, I'll split you in on the profits.
He must be making a fair bit of money, because his bribe for them to go down the cinema involved about half a dozen £20 notes. So if you can throw that kind of money away and still be making a profit.
Yeah. I think
he's doing well.
Dave's just rich anyway, because he's always doing shady rip-off deals, and he's always on the lookout to make more money, even if it's 50p by ripping someone off.
Yep.
He's that sort of dude. So anyway, they decide to sleep on it. And the next morning, they're all grumpy from no sleep, and the flat's in complete chaos with noise and animal poo everywhere. But before they can argue with Dave too much, there's a doorbell ringing, and it's Mr. Rossiter, the landlord, because Molly can see him through the peephole. So they all go into a bit of a panic and hide the animals. Bit of an animal hiding montage. They let him in, and Mr. Rossiter says he's here for his annual inspection, which is we'll talk about that later. So there's this loud elephant noise from one of the bedrooms, and in a nutshell, Mr. Rossiter basically rumbles them, and he gives them 24 hours to get rid of the animals. At this point, Molly orders Dave to take back all the animals, which he does. And then we cut quickly back to Dave getting home after having presumably been out returning all the animals. But the others are still cross with him because they're sitting on the couch and there's a dog still in the flat. But Dave swears he's returned everything he took and he's never seen this dog before. And justifiably, they don't believe him.
Yep.
And then they cut forward quickly in time, close up on Mr. Stephen saying, "Oh, I think Dave's telling the truth." And the camera pans back to see Dave stretched out on a rack. and he's now at a length of about 15 feet or something.
Yep.
Stephen and Basil, because Molly's out of the flat, they still want to give him a few more cranks on the rack, just, to teach him a lesson.
For good measure.
Yeah, exactly. Good measure. That was a gag worthy of Basil.
No, didn't even
realise
I was making a gag.
Hey. Where are we? Right, so they're about to torture Dave. The doorbell rings again, and it's Mr. Rossiter who lets himself in before they can hide the dog. But luckily, Mr. Rossiter is so distracted by seeing Dave strung out on the rack.
This is amusing because they're concerned to hide the dog, but not the fact that they've got this 10-year-old boy on a torture device.
But that's what Basil says. Oh, don't worry, it's just extra homework. His last report said he needed to be stretched a bit.
Yep. Come on.
That's one of the higher quality gags that Basil comes out with. But he's old-fashioned humour from Basil. So Mr. Rossiter is so distracted by seeing Dave on the rack, he doesn't see Stephen sort of tiptoe off with the dog and hide it in the bathroom. So Mr. Rossiter ends up satisfied that the animals are gone, but as he's leaving, Molly's backing into the flat, keeping her eyes peeled for the landlord, not realising he's in there, and she goes, I can't see the horrible old Snoop anywhere. And she's got an armful of dog food.
Yep.
And Mr. Rossiter again rumbles her with tins of dog food, saying, well, explain your way out of this one. So they convince Mr. Rossiter that the dog food's for Mr. Stephen, who, as a young actor, will be starring in a dog food advert for Woofy Chunks.
Woofy Chunks.
And to prove it, they watch Mr. Stephen eat some tins of dog food, and Mr. Rossiter leaves. And so at this point, you hear the director yell cut, and there's a fourth wall breaking bit where they reveal Mr. Stephen didn't get to eat fake dog food, which was prime steak, but they gave the prime steak to the dog who wouldn't eat Woofy Chunks, and they gave Woofy Chunks to Mr. Stephen. Anyhow, Basil, Stephen, Molly and Dave decide it's best to get the hell out of the flat in case Mr. Rossiter, who's sniffing around doing other inspections, hears the dog barking, so they go down to Annel's caff, and they think they've got 5 minutes of safety. But no, Mr. Rossiter walks in, and they've been warned of this by the upstairs neighbour, Madison. And Mr. Rossiter's talking to Anil and India at the counter. He's obviously about to put up a poster of some sort. So our heroes get into this big panic because they know they're going to get caught with the dog. So Basil, Molly and Dave hold Stephen down and shove the dog in his mouth. And this is another thing on the show because they're always having to go at Mr. Stephen for having a wide head and a big mouth. Mr. Stephen's got the dog in his gob, and Mr. Rossiter comes over to the table saying, "Oh, hi, I'm just putting up these posters because I think I lost my dog back in the flats." And he answers to the name of Reggie, and he's a collie poodle cross. And if you've seen him, I've got a £50 reward. So Dave immediately flips on them.
As he says, Reggie.
Yeah, Reggie.
You hear this woof
from inside Mr.
inside,
Stephen. Yeah. So Dave turns him in to get the reward money and says, "Your dog's in Mr. Stephen's gob," and pats Mr. Stephen on the back to try and get him to cough up the dog. But it goes the other way.
Yeah.
And it ends
Swallowed.
up and Mr. Stephen's tum gets all massive and distended. Not long to go now. So we cut back to the flat where everyone's standing around Mr. Stephen.
We've got to find out how this ends. He swallowed a dog.
So Mr. Stephen's strapped to this bed and he's got this enormous tum, and I think they're doing it like this birth scene. So basically, Mr. Rossiter's so worried about his dog, and then he sees Basil in his snorkel and diving gear, and we find out Basil's
He's the doctor, or the
cave diver.
The cave diver.
Basil's
That's
going.
not what I was reaching for, but we'll go with that.
Yeah. So Basil's going in. He doesn't want to, but he's got to go into Mr. Stephen and rescue the dog. So he's got all his diving gear on and his snorkel. And anyway, Basil goes in because Mr. Stephen doesn't want to let them in, and he shuts his mouth quick fast. But Dave whacks him on the head with a mallet, and as he screams, Basil dives into his gob, shuffles down the rope, hands it to the dog, and then pulls the dog out of Mr. Stephen's stomach and saves the day. And Mr. Rossiter's so happy to have his dog back. Mm-hmm. And that's the end of the episode. Complete crazy.
Crazy. It's one way to describe it.
Oh, look, this is genius, Dave. Okay, so I've got other stuff written. But what have you got? What was your reaction to all of this fast-paced madcap craziness?
Well, I was just wondering on the subject of the inside Stephen's stomach scene.
Yeah.
If this is... Okay, so we firmly established the fact that this is a TV show being filmed.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we explain this scene where we're inside Stephen's stomach? Is this another set that they've made? And
no, this is just the universe that they can actually... Basil can do this sort of stuff. So it's a completely crazy...
They're filming it inside of Stephen's stomach.
Yeah, and it's Stephen's real stomach. It's just, this is for kids, dude. You gotta, it's put out on CBBC.
Okay.
Anything can happen. It's like a cartoon in that way. So yeah, so although they're on a set and they are actors doing this stuff, which they allude to, but the stomach thing really happened,
Yes, okay.
That's my reading.
We're blending the two.
Yeah.
In some bizarre blend.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah. Well, I think it's fair to say we're firmly in the so bad it's good camp here, aren't we?
Hooray! I hope so. Yeah, I just really enjoy it. But yeah.
Garth Marenghi and Leno Woodley and Sledgehammer. So
yes, and
we're not breaking the fourth wall so much that we're acknowledging the fact that he's actually
a glove puppet. No, he's a real fox. Yeah. It's the levels it's operating on are very inconsistent, man.
Oh. It's doing my head in, right? Keep going.
Well, where were you, though?
No. I've got lots of notes, but we can come back to that.
Right, okay. So, all I've got left are various gags and reasons I think it should go into the Hall of Fame. So, some of the gags, there are tons and tons of jokes, most of them from Basil, but Basil's ones in particular are just terrible. The puns, it's just, oh my goodness.
Can you give me an example?
Maybe they're in my notes here, but I'll go through them in order.
There's got to be at least a few in there.
So when Dave bribes them with the fistful of cash to go to the cinemas, they go, what's on at the cinema, Molly? And she says, 101 Dalmatians, King Kong, Animal House, Anaconda, and Close Encounters of the Third Kind. So that's an example of a crappy pun.
Yep, that's Basil's guess at the end of the...
And when they see the animals, because as I've said in several episodes of Sitcom Showdown before, whenever you have puppet animals and having violence done to them, I always find that hilarious.
Yep.
So, but it goes both ways in Basil Brush. So when they see the animals getting back from the movies, and they can't believe that the flat is full of all these creatures, and Mr. Stevens says, oh, maybe we're all asleep and it's just a dream. And so Basil immediately turns around and chomps him really hard on the arm.
Yeah.
And you can hear bones cracking and all sorts of stuff.
I like that.
It's just to make sure Mr. Stevens not asleep, and Mr. Stevens immediately turns around, grabs Basil's tail and goes, Krrr. Yeah, so I love it when Basil's dishing out violence or being violent. And especially a huge thing on this show is the cartoon sound effects. And I swear this dude's getting paid per noise, because it's just completely chock-a-block with straight up cartoon sound effects. Like, when people are running up to something, they go and all that sort of, I might put some samples in.
He's getting paid by the effect.
Yeah, pretty much. Mr. Stevens say, why has the elephant got to stay in my room? And Dave goes, because the mice are in mine. And you can't have that. Did you ever see that show where they put mice in the way of elephants, and the elephants actually saw the mice and backed off?
No,
the
I didn't realise that was actually a thing.
Yeah, they always thought it was a cliche, so some show decided to test it.
Mythbusters.
It probably was Mythbusters, yeah. Was it?
I don't know, it sounds a bit too simple to be a Mythbusters thing.
Wow.
And it doesn't involve any explosions. So.
No, good point. But yes, so there's also the big gag where Mr. Rossiter says, I'm just here for my annual inspection. And Basil quickly whips out this book and says, I've got one here from 1976. And it's the 1976 Basil Brush Annual.
Yep.
When I first saw that, I was on the floor for hours just rolling around in laughter.
Yeah, I think that was easily the best gag in there.
Oh, it was brilliant.
That was a good one.
And so Mr. Rossiter tells them to get rid of the elephant or they're going to be evicted. And he emphasises, no animals. To which Dave, deliberately trying to get Basil in the craft, just says, what about the fox? And that's the first of two moments where we get it brought home to us that even though we forget, Basil is an actual animal.
Yep, I'd been thinking that for about 5 minutes beforehand.
Yeah.
But it was amusing they were trying to get all these other animals out of the flat, and Basil's just...
Yeah, his name's on the lease.
Is it?
Well, I think it was his flat before Mr. Stephen and that moved in.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but we forget. We think Basil's human. Well, I do. And Dave's response to being told to forcefully to get rid of the animals. The first thing he does is gets on the blower to the vet and say, hello, do you put down animals? Can you do a discount on a dog lot? which just illustrates what a beepity beep Dave is.
Yep.
And then he immediately, plan B, when he can't get away with that, is to sell them to Anil to go into his chicken pie. And he can't get away with that either because he's trying to avoid, quote, hours of work, unquote. Lots of cool visual stuff. Is a Basil in his diving gear and snorkel lowering himself into Mr. Stevens' stomach while the Mission Impossible music is playing. That's the point at which he snapped, I think, and said, this is just terrible. And I was just cheering and going, yeah. I've reached the end of my gags. I couldn't write them all down because my hand was getting sore because there's so many jokes because it's so good.
So many jokes.
Okay.
Right, some notable gags. Either notably good or notably bad. Listener, you be the judge. I like the bit where Basil breathes on Stephen for a second time in a very spiteful way. That was just thrown in as an aside, but it was pretty funny.
Yeah.
There's a joke about pet sitting being big business, and this is happened either just after or just before an elephant obviously is taking an enormous dump in Stephen's bedroom.
And Basil's thing is, you weren't kidding, mate.
Yeah, exactly. And then when they've been rumbled that the elephant is in Stephen's bedroom by the landlord, Basil says, I thought that was rather a large hole in the skirting board.
Yeah. It explains how it got in there.
Exactly. And we were wondering how they could actually have fitted an elephant through the doorway in the first place. And of course they couldn't. But anyway,
no,
we won't get hung up on that.
It might have come in through the tunnel that they dug in the camping episode.
Yeah, maybe.
There you go.
There's this gag where... Now, what happens here, Jeff? Help me out.
Okay.
He says, you must think I was born yesterday. This is the landlord. And then the next thing you know, Stephen slides in with a birthday
cake.
A birthday cake. Now, what's happening there? Because
they do think he was born yesterday, and Basil says, happy belated birthday.
Oh, okay. They're wishing him a belated birthday for yesterday.
Yeah. So they set this stuff up, and then Basil usually delivers the punchline, but because it happens so fast...
I think this is notable... Well, I noted it a few times. These things were happening, they were so wacky and so out of left field and happening so quickly that by the time
you figure out what's going on,
I figured out what was going on, we were like well and truly 2 or 3 gags more into the episode.
Oh, yeah.
I was writing notes about the last thing that confused me.
Yeah.
And then I looked up and I was confused all over again.
We'll have to stop it now and watch it again.
Yeah, or not.
No. So, yeah, exactly. What else have you got?
That's the end of my notes.
Really?
Yeah.
Looks like there's a lot more on there.
I've got diarrhea sounds written down.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I thought it was terrible.
Yeah? A bit lowbrow for you, that bit.
I don't know. There's something about the execution that...
was off kilter for you.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, no.
I think I was off kilter, or I was off balance.
Yeah. But I think you would enjoy it if you watched other episodes.
Yep. Yeah. Well, I enjoyed this.
Oh, okay, cool. Right, I can go into my spiel.
Yep.
Right, well, I'm going
Spiel away.
Yeah, I will. So, as you know, I like a fast-paced sitcom. And the sheer stupidity of things like Dave being stretched out on the rack, all the animals shoving the dog into Mr. Stephen, and then Basil having to go and fetch the dog out, there's a lot of goodies in it. And it's not animated, and yet it has got a puppet in it. So it's pretty unique, I think, amongst all those sorts of things. And it's not old Basil Brush, which is variety and sketches and sitting at a desk. So that's pretty cool. So what I might do, just for a bit of variety, is I've got my essay here from 2006, which, by the way, I got a distinction for. So if the professor agrees, then I think it should get an automatic pass. But I'm just cherry-picking a few things.
Did you bribe him by sending him to the cinema, though?
No, I didn't. No, I was a poor student.
With £20 notes?
So, like, not being a product of a step backwards into nostalgia. So this new Basil Brush show, it embraces mocks and adds to the lexicon of modern television by taking its cues unashamedly from every television phenomenon of the last 10 years. So it takes all these things that are on television around that time, Pop Idol and Steve Irwin's, Crocodile Hunter show, and it turns them around and mocks them while doing all this fourth wall stuff, which I think, because I've watched so many other episodes, that's why I think it's so smart. And so when it's doing this to all these other TV shows, it's doing it from the inside, right? So they're television industry people, so they're aping the moves and the camera angles and the sound things and the filming style and the language, and it tweaks them all up for laughs. So there's one where Stephen's dating a hungry, young, aspiring, but not very nice actress who's on not EastEnders, but whatever Basil Brush calls EastEnders.
Yep.
And then once she realises Basil's more famous, she dumps Mr. Stephen for Basil. and then it does all these things. So it's doing that to all these other British television institutions. All that improvisation wasn't in the essay, by the way. So getting back to it, every episode plays up to pop culture, and it includes all these self-referential moments that tear down the fourth wall. And it's playing to the kids of that era who are more media savvy than the earlier generations, like our generation. And so the kids know what's going on, and it's sort of playing to them, and the adults can get it as well. So when Molly plans to run away from home, Basil doesn't deliver this mushy family support speech to win her back. He just offers to double her money and move her into a bigger dressing room. And it's that sort of stuff. And everything about the Basil Brush show is light, bright, and fun. The sets, the performances, the music, and the writing. It's smart without being complex and innocent without being dull. The end. Yeah. So there you go. I just condensed pages of analysis down to probably a few minutes of speaking. So that's where I'm at on this one there, Steve-O.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
you're giving me that look. All right, so what do we think? Do you have any final thoughts before you pronounce judgment?
No, well, not really. I mean, as I said, I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that. And there were some good gags in there, but I think it does come down to that so bad it's good thing where you just, sometimes you love it and sometimes you're left scratching your head and wondering what's going on.
Yeah, like I was with Garth Marenghi.
Yeah, I found myself there was the gag and I was trying to figure out the gag and then I kind of got it or didn't get it and then we were on to the...
2 or 3 more
30 seconds on and I'd already missed a couple of things at that point, so I was kind of struggling to keep up with some of it.
Yeah.
And I think it's this blend of, it's the TV show and they're breaking the fourth wall, so there's that side of things, and then there's the sitcom storyline going on, and then they're doing things that break the rules of both those things at the same, like the thing inside the stomach. I mean, that doesn't fit inside any of those
universes.
2 universes. So I think I was just struggling with all these competing kind of things going on.
Yeah. No, I totally understand that.
So I think I enjoyed it and I'd watch it again, but I don't know that I'd rate it 5 stars.
And put it into the Hall of Fame?
No, I think that's probably like a 3 or a 4, something like that.
Okay.
But then I haven't watched other Basil Brush to compare it to other episodes.
But that's all right. That's the way it goes. That's what we're here for.
So, alas, Basil.
Yeah.
I can't put you in.
Yeah, no, bad luck, Basil. I would highly recommend viewers to check it out. And there's a YouTube channel, which I think is called Classic New CBBC. And they've uploaded a few episodes, but it does vary wildly from Series 1 to, say, Series 6. Because half the characters would have changed and a few stylistic things would have changed as well. But it's up there.
Cool.
Yes. Alrighty, well, we'll be back in a fortnight with episode 37, and that'll be your turn.
We've broken the winning streak.
It's all right. That's the way it goes. Look, I can go back to some more of our trusty reliables. There's still a couple of Ben Eltons left out there.
Yeah, I haven't chosen a reliable one for next time, though.
Haven't you?
No.
All right, so we might be on a losing streak here.
Yeah, this might be the start of a losing streak. We'll have to see.
No, there's
still in October we're going to do Halloween
themed
episodes. So
yeah, you've chosen yours. I haven't chosen mine.
Yeah. Still, you haven't chosen yours.
No. I've been finding it difficult to find
really
good ones. But for the sake of this Halloween one, are we suspending the Hall of Fame thing? Because the pool of episodes to choose from is so shrunken. You weren't. Oh, okay, right.
I'm happy to put mine up.
Yeah.
But if you want to submit something just for the laughs,
yeah,
I'm happy with that.
I'll think about it.
Yeah, you still got a bit of time.
Yeah, cool. So that's to look forward to in October. We're going to have some Halloween episodes. Well, in that case, we'll see you for episode 37, the September's second half episode, and then it'll be into Halloween. Cool. All right, thanks, Steve.
Okay, thanks, Jeff.
Cheers.
See you, everyone. Bye.
Bye. Join us next time on Sitcom Showdown when we'll be putting another 5-star episode under the microscope. And in the meantime, you can contact us with feedback on Facebook, Twitter @Sitcom Showdown, or by email sitcomshowdown@gmail.com.